Hello students, this is a follow-up to our focus free write the other day where I asked you to describe the setting of two Ray Bradbury worlds that we've read about. Say more about how the setting affects the mood of the story. I want you to remember that mood is what the audience feels and tone is what the speaker feels. So we're focusing on mood for this. I'm using a temporary title right here. This is a temporary title that I'm going to use in my working document. You'll notice that I'm pre-populated it with some questions. The working title I'm using right now is How Setting Affects Mood in the Pedestrian in Fahrenheit 451. I'm getting how setting affects mood from this question right here. And I'm using the Pedestrian in Fahrenheit 451 because my evidence is taken from the Pedestrian and from Fahrenheit 451. Now, there is a conversation to be had about how I chose these pieces of evidence. Hopefully, by the end of this, you will see the connection between the two of them, but I realize that this tutorial in and of itself may not give you enough information for developing that skill of selecting the right evidence in the first place. We'll talk more about that later. For now, I want you to follow along with me as I show you how I unpack the evidence, how I analyze pieces within the evidence, and then use that to form connections between the two pieces, which ultimately will lead into a so what statement. Okay, so here's my piece of evidence from the Pedestrian right here. It's a sentence. I think it's a good sentence because I think there's stuff inside of this that's going to help me talk about setting. This is about the setting, and then there's stuff in here that's going to help me talk about the mood. So I'm just, in my notes here, I've said analysis right here, and I'm going to go through and I'm going to find the parts that I think are the best parts for me to analyze. Sudden gray phantoms seemed to manifest upon inner room walls where a curtain was still undrawn against the night. So this part right here, gray phantoms, that strikes me as being important. So I'm going to put that in quotes right here. Manifest upon inner room walls where a curtain was still undrawn against the night. So upon inner room walls where a curtain was still undrawn, this strikes me as being an important image. I want to make sure that I talk about that. Okay. Or there was whisperings or murmurs. I think this is a good one too. Where a window in a tomb-like building was open. Okay, tomb-like building. This is super important. I can tell that that one's going to be really important. Okay, so you see how I've set up my document here, right? I've highlighted or boldened the places that I think are the most important part of this quote, and I've pulled those out and I've separated them, right? So I have these four different things, which I think I can talk more about, okay? So gray phantoms. What are gray phantoms? These are ghosts, okay? Gray is a kind of a depressing color, right? It's actually kind of a lack of color. So that might be that could connect to lifelessness, okay? Which connects to the ghost part of it, right? Phantoms is another word for ghosts, okay? Ghosts are ghosts also give a sense of feeling. It's kind of like spooky feeling, we'll say. Ghosts give a spooky feeling. I don't think these are Casper the Friendly Ghosts. I think these might be something more sinister, right? There's something kind of sinister about this. Upon inner room walls where a curtain was still undrawn. Okay, so the ghosts are manifest upon the inner room walls where a curtain was still undrawn. So the image we have is the image of looking into a house where the curtains are open, and inside the house we see ghosts. Maybe these are shadows against the wall. There's not a lot of light inside these houses. We know from the Pedestrian that these are kind of the firefly light. Right? The houses are are they have the firefly light from another quote. Remember that, right? If you wanted to go above and beyond, you could find a second quote from the pedestrian, that part that talks about the firefly light, compared to the bright light of Leonard Mead's house, right? This is something that you did a focus-free write about earlier when we talked about the beginning and the end of the pedestrian and the difference in those images of the houses and the light, right? So you could pull that into this if you wanted to, okay? So here I've talked about gray phantoms. Here I've talked about the inner room walls where a curtain was still undrawn. I want to talk about whisperings and murmurs, right? So whisperings and murmurs, this adds to the feeling of unease. We don't know where the voices are coming from, right? They're disembodied, and that means that they're separated. They're separated from the people. Whisperings and murmurs is sort of like there's a little bit of suspense in here, right? Okay, now the tomb-like building. A tomb is a place for dead people, right? And then comparing comparing the house to a tomb, you know, it brings out this idea of the people inside being dead or dying, not alive. Okay, so I want you to see, I found a quote that I think is going to help me understand setting and how the setting affects the mood. I selected the words, the phrases inside the quote that I thought were the most important, and I isolated them. I put them here, right? And then I said more about them. Okay, so this is what you would see this, right? Like if this was on our template, you would see this is a Fred, right? And this is a Seymour. You see that? So I'm kind of filling out the Freds and the Seymours first. So look, I have 1 Fred Seymour, 2 Fred Seymour, 3 Fred Seymour, 4 Fred Seymour for this one quote. All right. The task is to write 1 paragraph. So we're not going to be using the 1 paragraph response template in the same way. It's not like we can take this. It's not like we can take this sentence and put it into the topic sentence, right? Right now we're trying to find what our topic sentence is going to be for the 1 paragraph. So the way that we go about getting that is by looking at the evidence first, unpacking the evidence, okay? We'll do the same thing for this one here, and then afterwards we're going to look at the connections. Once we have those connections, what are the connections between the analysis and my evidence, right? That turns into the topic sentence. All right, we'll come back to that in a second. Let's push this down here. All right, this is my second piece of evidence. This is from the novel, Fahrenheit 451. It was like coming into the cold marbled room of a mausoleum after the moon had set. Complete darkness, not a hint of silver world outside, the windows tightly shut, the chamber a tomb world where no sound from the great city could penetrate. I hope when you are reading this quotation, after having followed along with me my analysis of this quotation here, I hope that as I'm reading it, you're making connections, that the little bells are going off inside your head, okay? So it was like coming into the cold marbled room of a mausoleum. That's a connection I think I can write about. That's an important part I want to talk more about. After the moon had set, I think the moon is probably important. Complete darkness, that's important. Not a hint of silver world outside, also important. The windows tightly shut, the chamber a tomb world. This is super important, tomb world, right? We know that's going to be important because we also saw something about a tomb up here, right? That's a good connection. Okay, so That's going to be the last one we talk about. First one, cold marbled room of a mausoleum. After the moon had set, complete darkness, not a hint of silver world outside. The windows tightly shut. The chamber, a tomb world where no sound from the great city could penetrate. No sound could penetrate. Okay, so let's analyze. Cold marbled room of a mausoleum. Marble's cold. Think of Cold Stone Marble Creamery, ice cream, right? Mausoleum is it's like a house for dead people, right? See these? It's like a building that we can put, that people put their family members in. It's like a little house, right? For wealthy people to put their dead bodies in. Okay, it looks like a little house, right? Oops, this one. Mausoleum is a stone house. Marble, maybe? Sometimes maybe they're marble. It's a stone house for dead bodies of a family. We know that this is coming from the scene where Guy walks into his bedroom, right? Guy is walking into his bedroom after meeting Clarice, right? He sees Mildred, his wife, laying on her bed, almost lifeless, right? Because she's overdosed. That's the context for this, right? So we don't know yet that Mildred, if this part here, he sees Mildred laying on her bed, that happens after this piece of evidence. In retrospect, we can see that this is foreshadowing, right? The mausoleum part foreshadows Mildred's overdose. Not a hint of silver world. All right, what's the hint of silver world? So it's complete darkness, not a hint of silver world. It's complete darkness because it's after the moon had set, right? Moon has gone down. It's dark. Not a hint of silver world. That's moonlight. Okay? This adds to the feeling of kind of loneliness that Guy gets, right? Right? We feel bad for Guy. And we're a little scared ourselves, right? All right, when it's dark, we can't see what's around us, right? The unknown is scary. It can frighten us. Right? We also have this, there's this almost dead body inside too, right? So the windows are tightly shut, right? This connects to the mausoleum. Remember these? You see how they're all kind of like closed up inside? It's like a casket. Why would a mausoleum be closed up inside? Why would it be sealed tight? Right? They're sealed tight to prevent people from disturbing the grave. Right? Also, more practically, to keep the smell inside. So the windows are tightly shut. It's almost so that's for Mildred inside, right? But for Guy, it adds this feeling of trapped, right? He's enclosed in this space, right? Like it's hard to escape it. Like she's shut off. Like she's hidden away from the outside world. Okay, Tomb World, big time, right? You see the connection already. The tomb-like building and pedestrian. Window in a tomb-like building was still open, okay? So now we're talking about the tomb world here of windows tightly shut, the chamber, a tomb world where no sound from the great city would penetrate. So it continued to describe the bedroom, right? As a tomb or a mausoleum, right? Adds to the feeling of something bad about to happen. No sound from this great city could penetrate. Okay, so this adds to the feeling of trapped, right? The enclosed space, tightly sealed, right? Okay, now, what are the connections between the analysis of mind evidence, right? So this is a major one, right? The tomb world. So we'll just copy and paste these two right here. Put them next to each other, and we're going to try to combine them, okay? Are they talking about the same thing? The tomb and the mausoleum. It's the feeling of something bad is about to happen, right? Just the dead bodies. As if the people inside, the structures that are being described are lifeless. Comparing the house to a tomb brings out this idea of the people inside being dead or dying. Comparing the house of the room to a tomb or a mausoleum brings out the idea, right? So it connects to this idea of the people inside being dead or dying, not alive. Right? So what's the effect of this on mood, right? Mood is dark and scary and ominous, right? It's ominous. We know what I mean by ominous? Actually, that was interesting. Ominous images, right? Look at these, ominous images. Ooh, scary. Oh. Give the worrying impression that something bad is going to happen, threateningly inauspicious. Oh, look at those other words. Sinister, doomy, menacing, threatening, dire. All right, what are some other connections here? I wonder if there's something with the moon and darkness. I have the idea of the light from inside, right? He's walking around at night. Sudden gray phantoms seem to manifest upon inner room walls where a curtain was still undrawn against the night. So you have the idea of the night here, and then you have the idea of complete darkness. It's all happening at night. Both scenes take place at night. So the darkness, isolation, loneliness. Okay, so here's some connections between the evidence. How are we going to turn this into a topic sentence? Maybe the first step of a topic sentence for many of you would be to say something along the lines of, in Ray Bradbury's The Pedestrian in Fahrenheit 451, the setting affects the mood to give a feeling of darkness or loneliness, right? How can we improve that a little bit more? How can we make it an even better sentence? So let's look at these connections here. Let's craft it into a topic sentence that's going to really capture the reader. Let's start with the idea of this mood of dark and scary and ominous, feeling isolated and lonely. What are the best words in those two? Right? I think ominous is a good one. And I think also this feeling of loneliness is good. I spell it right. I'm gonna take a step back and I'm gonna try to look at both of the pieces of evidence. I'm going to try to look at them as similar. What are the things that they're both doing together? And they're both giving me this feeling of something about to happen. There's a feeling of kind of foreboding. Okay? So I'm going to say Ray Bradbury creates feelings of foreboding, loneliness for his main characters. Through the use of setting. Now, I'm not totally happy with that sentence right now, but the idea that I'm working with is that the setting is described in such a way to create these feelings of foreboding loneliness, okay? So maybe I'll actually do that as my second try. Setting is described in such a way as to create feelings of ominous feelings of foreboding and loneliness. So we'll just say the setting of both texts is described when we say this, the description of setting. The description of setting in both texts creates ominous feelings of foreboding and loneliness. Maybe ominous is redundant. Creates feelings of foreboding and loneliness, which gives the reader a sense of something bad about to happen, right? We can be fancy and say foreshadows. Something bad is about to happen. In the case of Leonard Mead and The Pedestrian, he will be arrested for Guy Montag in Fahrenheit 451. He will soon discover his wife on the bed, nearly dead from taking too many sleeping might have to clean that up a little bit later, okay? So now we have what I would say is a good topic sentence with a good kind of explanation afterwards, right? So if we were to look at this whole thing as kind of the introduction part, telling the reader what they're about to read, the description of setting in, we'll say, Ray Bradbury's short story, The Pedestrian, and his novel. The description of setting in Ray Bradbury's short story, The Pedestrian, and his novel Fahrenheit 451 creates feelings of foreboding and loneliness, which foreshadow something bad about to happen. Something bad, which foreshadows that something bad is about to happen. Something bad is about to happen to the main characters. In the case of Leonard Mead and The Pedestrian, he will be arrested at the end of the story. For Guy Montag in Fahrenheit 451, we'll say fireman for fireman. Guy Montag in Fahrenheit 451, he will soon discover his wife on the bed, nearly dead from taking too many sleeping pills. As I'm thinking about this, I want to also keep in mind what the so what might be, because I'm trying to move towards that so what. What do you think that might be? I'm thinking it's going to have to do with this dystopia. I think that's going to, I think it's going to have something to do with the dystopia conventions that we talked about, right? So that's what I'm shooting for. All right, so what we've done here is we've talked about taking the evidence, right, unpacking it into the little bits, gray phantoms, room walls where a curtain was still undrawn, analyzing it, pulling apart that evidence, making connections. Okay, we did that for two different pieces of evidence. Evidence 1 from The Pedestrian and evidence 2 from Fahrenheit 451. We did it twice. And then we took the analysis, we reread the analysis, and then we found connections between it. And the connections we found were that they both mentioned this idea of tombs, right, mausoleums, dead people, right? The idea that the people inside are dead or dying or not alive. It gives a dark mood, scary, ominous. And then we also have this idea that both scenes take place at night, in darkness and in isolation. Okay, and we have the feeling of ominous loneliness and foreboding. Okay, so now what I have is the beginning of my paragraph right here. Okay, so I'm going to go back up here, and I'm going to take my title, and I'm going to put it here. Okay, I'm going to take the question again so that I can refer to it. I'm going to put that question right here so I can look at it. And now, as I make my plan for how I go forward, I want to talk about different examples, right? So I'm going to go back through and look at my analysis. I'm going to choose my best parts. I'm not going to use every single thing. I'm going to choose my best parts, okay? So I'm going to say right now, this is probably something I want to talk about. This one right here, because I made a connection to it. And I'm going to talk about this one right here. I'm going to blend those two together, all right? We're going to do that in our next lesson. I hope this is I hope you found this to be useful. And we'll talk later about how to choose the best evidence, and then we'll talk about how to go forward with developing this paragraph. Your focus-free write, obviously, the next one is going to be to finish writing this paragraph, right? I hope you can see that connection. All right, kiddos, take care of each other, make good decisions.